Hi everyone, today I'm going to teach you about adding mixed numbers. We have two learning targets today, but they're pretty closely related. The first one is I can add mixed numbers with like denominators, including those in number stories. And the second one is I can add mixed numbers with unlike denominators, including those in number stories. Now before you go on, you need to make sure that you understand mixed numbers and improper fractions and how to move between the two. Also, you need to remember that we're going to put our answers in lowest terms. So if either of those two concepts are still a little bit tricky for you, make sure that you go and find the videos for those two concepts so that you can go on. Okay, first things first, a quick little review. When we add fractions, we have to have common or the same denominators. Now these two already start in common denominators. And then all we do is add the numerators. So the denominator, or the size of the piece, stays the same. And then we just do 7 plus 7, so 14/8. 14/8, we're going to put that into lowest terms. So that's really, we do 14 and divide it by 8. We say how many eighths, or how many wholes are there in 14? There's 1, and that's 8. So that means that there are 6 that are left over. So that means we have 1 and 6/8. Now I can look at that and see that that's not in lowest terms because this is an even number and so is this. So I know that we can divide both of those by 2. So 1 and 6/8, divide the numerator and the denominator each by 2. It becomes 1 and 3/4. When we have mixed numbers that have common denominators, it really works about the same way. I like to think about this, 3 and 1/8, as really being 3 plus 1/8. So I think I'm going to separate those. And then I think about 5 and 3/8 as being 5 plus 3/8. Kind of like how we did partial sums. And then we can add the two parts. We can add 3 plus 5, and that's 8. And then 1/8 and 3/8. That's 4/8. Now 4/8, I can see that that's not in lowest terms. And actually that's a really easy one that I can do in my head without much work. That becomes 1/2. And then the whole number stays the whole number, because if we have 8, we have 8. So this is 8 and 1/2. So the important part to remember is not to forget to put that, the whole number part, back together with the fraction part after you separate them. Now sometimes we might have a situation that we end up with an improper fraction as our fraction part. So let me show you what I mean. So I think I'm going to separate these two like I did before and do 2 plus 3, because those are the whole number parts. 2 plus 3 is 5. And then I'm going to write off to the side 7/8 plus 5/8. And then eighths are eighths, so that stays the same. 7 plus 5 is 12. So of course we can't really leave this 5 and 12/8. So let me show you what this might look like. Okay, so I think I'm going to draw for you just this final result. So we ended up with 5 and 12/8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Of course we have, and that was pretty easy because that's the whole number part. And then we have 12/8. So I have two holes kind of left over, just drawn, ready to be filled up here. And they're each divided into 8 parts. So I'm going to shade in 12. So there's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So now what I can do is I can look at this and count how many do I have, how many holes do I have altogether. Well, I had the 5 that I started with, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I have another hole that's filled up. So 6 holes, and then 4/8 are left over. So we have 6 and 4/8. Okay, that's pretty easy to see when we draw it out. But let's think about this. We had 5 and 12/8 before. If we take 12/8 and turn that only into a mixed number, that's 1 4/8. If we add 5 plus 1 4/8, guess what we get? Yep, we get 6 4/8. And that's 6 1/2. Okay, here are a couple to try. Make sure you pause the video while you do these on a piece of paper. When you unpause the video, you're going to see the answers and the work revealed. Okay, here you go. 3 4/7 plus 4 1/7 equals 7 5/7. 1 3/4 and 2 3/4 altogether equals 4 1/2. Remember, you have to have it in lowest terms. Okay, now let's try some fractions or some mixed numbers that don't have common denominators. So we know that we need to get our fractions into common denominators, and if you forgot how to do that, make sure you go back to watching the adding and subtracting fraction video. 3 3/4 and 2 7/8 don't have a common denominator because our denominators are fourths and eighths. But with these, I do notice something that they have in common. I notice that 4 is a factor of 8. Or another way of saying that is that 8 is a multiple of 4. So instead of doing lots of extra work, I think I'm just going to turn 3 3/4 into eighths. So when we're changing mixed numbers into common denominators, the whole number really stays the same. That doesn't ever change because a whole is a whole no matter what. And then since I have eighths, all I'm going to do is turn my 3/4 into eighths by multiplying by 2. So 4 times 2, and whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. Whoops. And 3 3/4 becomes 3 6/8. Okay, so just something to remember here when we're converting mixed numbers into common denominators or any equivalent fractions, really, the whole number part doesn't change. Now, I don't need to do anything with 2 7/8, but I think I'm going to rewrite it just so it's right below where I'm working. So I'm just going to add the whole number parts together. 3 plus 2 is 5. 6 plus 7 is 13 eighths. And then the 13/8 part I know is equal to 1 5/8. So that'll become 6 5/8. Okay, here's another one for you to try right along with me. So go ahead and pause the video and try to work through this problem. And then when you unpause it, you'll see the solution. So our final solution is 6 1/20. Is that what you got? If it's not, make sure that you double check and figure out where you made a mistake. Okay, I bet during all of this you've been wondering where our good old friend, the crisscross method, went. Well, and we can use it here too, but what I think I'm going to do is just go ahead and set up over here the 1 plus 8 equals 9. And I just want to put that off to the side so I don't forget to put it back on at the end, because that changes the fractions quite a bit. And then I can just add together the two fraction parts, 7/8 plus 1/5. And we just do this like we did before, multiply the 7 and 5, 35. 8 times 1 is 8, and then 8 times 5 is 40. So of course then we get 43 40ths, and that's an improper fraction. 43 40ths is going to be 1 3/40. But don't forget, we have to add that 9 back on from over here, from the two whole number parts. So adding those together, we have 9 plus 1 3/40. And that equals 10 3/40. Okay, here's a couple for you to try with unlike denominators. Okay, here you go. So our final answer for 6 5/6 plus 3 3/5 is 10 13/30. And then 5 2/3 plus 1 5/6 ends up being 7 1/2. Remember, we have to get those into lowest terms. Okay, last but not least, here is your quiz for today. Go ahead and check Edmodo as soon as you're done. Put the answers into lowest terms, and have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.